This was Casey Anthony's first statement. She wrote it on the 16th of July, 5 minutes past 1 in the morning.
Correct. This would have been the report that was initiated by the responding officer post 911 calls.
The fact that it is 3 1/3 pages, what does that tell you?
Casey had 31 days to account for here, and she probably could have written a lot more, but that also means she had 31 days to think about what she was going to tell investigators and, for that matter, put on paper.
Well, it's written here the offence is kidnapping, but she actually talks about her disappearance. Yeah, they're two completely different things, aren't they? Kidnapping, somebody who's taken her daughter, abducted her, has kidnapped her, versus she's just disappeared into thin air.
Yeah, that struck me right away, the disappearance, as if some magician snapped his or her fingers, and it helps sort of bring down the true importance of this, because if something disappears, it's very possible, like with a magician, it'll appear again.
And she would have more accurately said the day she was abducted, supposedly by Zanny. So what about on the second page, Jim?
We have the excellent description of Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez, 25 years old, from New York, roughly 5'7" tall.
She actually gave an artist's sketch of Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez.
That's an incredible amount of detail.
Yes.
And she must have sat with a forensic artist to do that for quite a bit of time.
Based on the first information provided to law enforcement, Zenaida Gonzalez was, in fact, the first suspect in this investigation.
That completely washed out. There was absolutely no evidence anybody named Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez had anything to do with Caylee Anthony's disappearance.
Correct.
On the second page, there's some really strange language being used. For example, Casey says, I'd called Zenaida earlier that morning after dropping off Caylee at Zenaida's apartment.
But in the afternoon, her phone was no longer in service or working.
She's told the police a reason why Zenaida's phone would not ring if they called it, because it didn't exist in the first place.
I noticed her descriptors for her daughter. She obviously begins it, I took my daughter, Caylee Marie Anthony. Okay, that's fine. Putting her full name out there sort of makes sense here. But I counted 8 separate times through this 700-word statement where she used the phrase, my daughter. She almost like has to prove to who's ever going to be reading this that, oh, by the way, this is my daughter. I want to remind you, and of course, if it's my daughter, I would never do anything to harm her.
I've spent every day looking for my daughter. I have lied and stolen from friends and family to do whatever I could to find my daughter.
For the past 4 weeks since Caylee's disappearance,
I've tried to find any information about Caylee, whether by going to a popular bar or restaurant.
Right, and popular bars, restaurants.
Yes.
I mean, that just is so out of place, but I'm still intrigued as to why manufacture so many untruths. What purpose do they serve for her? And that's the really important part to this.
Right.
A fantasy life can be triggered through trauma, a sort of a coping mechanism. So that's what I'm trying to understand, is what purpose do the lies serve for Casey?